this computer. Yeah.
Nice horse.
You want to see what we do best? We got the recipe for success. We don't need sight to make something good tonight. We're all in the kitchen. We're gonna show you what we got. Full of the spice of life. We're stirring up the pot. We're cooking without looking. Cooking without looking. Yeah!
Welcome to our Cooking Without Looking TV show Holiday 2024 edition. I'm your host, Alan Preston. Today, we welcome back a longtime friend of the show, Sylvia Stinson Perez. Welcome, Sylvia.
Hi, Alan. Thanks. And I love the new music that we're playing. It's awesome.
That was great, wasn't it? Hey, I hear you have a new guide dog. Is that true?
I do, but she's run off, so I'll have to show her later in the show. But her name is Nellie. She's very nosy, so I send her off to the room.
I do understand. Well, it's very good to have you back again, Sylvia.
Thanks.
And today we welcome Scott Thornhill, the new executive director of the American Council of the Blind. Scott will be making a favorite holiday side dish, corn casserole. Oh, I remember that. Sylvia?
And I'm going to be making up another holiday favorite, but to anybody who remembers me, I love the sweet stuff, so I'll be making some Buckeyes, chocolate and peanut butter.
Oh, that sounds really good. I can't wait for that.
But before we get started, we want to remind everyone that all of the recipes made and shared on Cooking Without Looking are made by people who are blind or low vision.
And all of the people who appear on our show are either blind or low vision, right?
Yep.
Let's see. So, without further ado, let's begin our culinary celebration of the Cooking Without Looking TV show, Holiday Edition 2024.
And I am thrilled to be welcoming a friend of mine who, as you said, Alan, is the new executive director of the American Council of the Blind, ACB for short. So, Scott Thornhill, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks a lot, Sylvia and Alan. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing some time with you today and cooking one of my family's favorite recipes. So I have been the executive director of the American Council of the Blind now for about 9 months, so I can still claim new for a little while longer. I don't know how long you get for new, but I'll take as long as I can get. But came to the American Council of the Blind from a National Industries for the Blind organization named Alpha Point, where I had been for 6 years as their director of public policy. And my wife and I, Jane, my wife and I have had a real estate brokerage for about 20 years, and she continues to be the operator there. But I still have my license, but no longer active. Haven't really been active in that business for a while. But so I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa at 8. So I'm an RPer, as those in the blindness world would say. But so diagnosed at 8, and they said that at 15, they said I'd be blind by 40. Which seemed really old when I was 15. It doesn't seem nearly as old now. So I lost my vision. I tried to overachieve, so I hit that goal at 36. But I was legally blind well before that. But just in my journey of blindness, sort of did what a lot of people do. It's we all have our unique story, but in my case, I sort of hid it and was ashamed and didn't want to tell anybody, and then had to kind of do a 180 and choose to live life a different way. And so that's what I've done. And that's what really moved me to get into the nonprofit world, so to speak, and worked first with the Organization of the Ability One program, and now with the American Council of the Blind. And boy, it's great. At ACB, we have about 8,000 members across the United States and members in several countries outside of the United States, and 66 affiliates. So we have our geographic affiliates in the States, and then we have our special interest affiliates that cover a lot of different different interests that people may have. So 63-year-old organization, and so proud to be a part of it, and to be able to lead a staff that's just incredible. So thank you.
Thanks. And I'm an ACB member, so.
That's right. we love ACB. Throw it out there.
And Scott, you are going to be making one of my favorite things today. So tell us your recipe and show us how you do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to be making, we're calling Thornhill Family Corn Casserole.
Let me say before you do this,
Yeah.
I know Scott and I love to eat.
I do.
Me too. We've enjoyed some meals together.
Yes.
And so now I didn't know he liked to cook, so I'm looking forward to that. Let's see. Oh, go for it.
I do like to cook, but and the vision loss has kind of impacted that. I think when my left eye went in 2007, it kind of changed the way I approached cooking, just to be blunt. But I've always enjoyed it because you can kind of escape when you're cooking. Like you can kind of just get away from the worries of the day, and sort of just dive into whatever it is you're doing. So this recipe is the Thornhill Family Corn Casserole. Now, around the house, right, we don't call it the Thornhill Family Corn Casserole, right? Just call it corn casserole. So we're not quite that bougie to call it the Thornhill Family Corn Casserole around the house. But it's simple, but yet it provides a lot of flavor. And for those who can see, it provides color for something yellow on the table, especially whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. It's a wonderful side dish. It's fairly simple to make. It doesn't take terribly long, but I've always enjoyed a good flavor. And I have to tell you, as part of this, and I'll be showing you the different things involved, but my mother loved to cook. And so I learned that from her. I learned cooking from my mom. So whenever I cook, I sort of think of my mom, who's passed away at this point, but she probably had 300 cookbooks by the time she passed away. And she read cookbooks like a story. They weren't just a cookbook to her. They weren't just recipes. She would read them. And I mean, you would find the most obscure cookbooks. It would be one from a church in some place I'd never heard of, right? The ladies of the church or whatever it was. And then you'd have some fancier, well-known chef cookbook. But she would read them. And even if she wasn't going to make the dish, she would just read it like a story. And so to me, this recipe kind of holds stories. And so first thing I'm going to do is turn the oven on about medium back here in the back, because I have a little saucepan. This recipe calls for melted butter. So I'm going to get that pan going. I'll put everything in this big dish. You can kind of watch it go in, and we can do that. So I'm going to start with the butter. And when we get this butter in the little saucepan to melt, the next little trick that Mom taught me, and it's part of this recipe, but I always try not to touch the butter, and I almost always fail. Like I'm failing right now and not touching the butter. So it'll be all over my hands, which always makes for also a fun and exciting. But then you take the wrapper of that butter, right? And Mom would always say, don't waste that, It's got, you let it sit on the counter a little bit to melt. So use that to wipe around the dish you're going to use to butter your dish without using, a cooking spray or something. You can use a cooking spray, but my mom would, cooking spray was not one of Mom's favorites, let's just say. So we would often use the wrapper of the butter to do that. And so we've got that going. Now let's see. So my butter is back here and it's good to go. Going to be melted very soon. So now what we're going to do is this recipe calls for some dry ingredients and some wet ingredients, but mainly dry. And then we're starting with this corn mix. So it's just like a Jiffy is the brand that we typically have used. And so I'm going to have this corn mix that we're going to put in the big mixing bowl here. And so
put in the whole box?
Yeah, going to dump in one box.
Okay.
One box of Jiffy corn mix. All right. And we've got that going. And then, so now I've already opened these cans and I'm going to tell you why. So this calls for 1 can of like whole kernel corn. And you do not drain it. That's very important because there's not a lot of other liquid in this dish. And so you want it to remain moist as it cooks. So you do not drain the whole kernel corn, right? That's where a lot of your liquid is going to come from. I went ahead and took the lids off because I didn't want to be opening them while we're having the show. Sometimes that can get a little tricky, but it's important, whether you're sighted or blind, to have a really good can opener, in my opinion, because I've had some that weren't so good. And, I thought for sure I was going to end up at the emergency room with a sliced hand. And so having a good can opener, I think, is really important. So we'll go ahead and just pour in that corn with the liquid. We're not going to drain that. That's very, very important. And then we also have a can of, now, hear me out on this one, a can of creamed corn. Now, I know some of us think when we hear creamed corn, we're like, oh my gosh, this is whatever. I won't make too many editorial comments about the creamed corn. But
cream corn.
I like creamed corn too, but some people
It's a southern thing. It's a southern.
some people associate it with being in a nursing home. I'm just going to throw it out there. Okay, so we got the creamed corn in there, which, as you would imagine, also has a decent amount of liquid, right? So we've got that happening. Now, I've got here 2 eggs that I'm also going to put in. And so I need to whisk those just a little bit before putting them in. So this is one of those things when you're blind, right? Cracking eggs. I do it usually either over the sink or over the edge of whatever container I'm going to be whisking them in. In this case, I'm doing it over the container I'm whisking in. Some people say, well, how do you do that? You're blind. You don't get any shells in there. It's the first pun of the day. It's blind luck. I just tend not to get shells in there. I've been doing it for years, cooking, and I'm pretty careful, and sometimes I'll have my wife check or my son check. And frankly, sometimes I'll just stick my fingers in there because I'm the one cooking anyway. I'll just stick my fingers in there and make sure I don't feel any shells. But this one I could tell as I cracked them that everything felt good. Didn't feel any shells going in. So I think we're in good shape. Going to whisk that just a little bit on those 2 eggs. Don't have to worry about it too much because it's gonna mix as it gets in there. You may hear that butter crackling. So I want to make sure on this butter that I don't let things go too far or it'll start to pop. And it'll pop more than I want it to. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dump these eggs in. All right, got the eggs going. And okay, now I'm going to go ahead with this butter. And I'm going to, now, this is one of those things too. How do I know this butter is completely melted and there's not a little tiny bit of butter that isn't melted? I don't. But I hear it popping and crackling, so I'm assuming it's melted. Right, it been sitting out, so it was already a little bit soft. And as I sort of swirl this pan a little bit, I can just sort of tell there's enough liquid in there that I feel like I'm in good shape. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour that melted butter into the dish, into the mixing bowl. Now, my wife and I had an agreement when we first got married. The agreement was that if I would cook, she didn't mind cleaning up. She has regretted that. We've been married 30 years. I think she's regretted that for about 29 and a half of those. I'm going to stir this just a tad right now because I do like to get just a little bit of stir going, just to sort of make sure that, that butter doesn't just sort of settle in one spot or anything like that. So now we got that going. Now, another piece that really gives us some good moisture and frankly, a little bit of flavor and things is sour cream. So we have a container of sour cream. I'm going to try this way first. I always like to try it this way first. Can I get the whole thing to go in there without having to? Nope, can't do it.
Scott, how big is that container of sour cream?
That is a great question, Alan. I know it's in the recipe. Off the top of my head, I've been doing it.
One of those little tiny containers?
Yeah, it's a fairly small container. It's not the taller one. It's the squat one.
Okay, well, I like the idea of using the entire box and the entire container. That's easy.
Yeah, and that's what
you need to know what size.
That's right. He got the container that matched the recipe, and that way I don't have to worry about it. Not that I would anyway, just to be frank. I'd probably just, spoon some out and put it in there and not worry too much about it because, when I cook, that's why I'm not always maybe the best at baking. Because I don't, precision is really my key. Now, one of the things I do, or I like to do, is I'll go ahead and take that spoon that I just put in that sour cream, right? And I'll go ahead and put that into the mixture as well, because I want to make sure I get every bit of that included in the dish, right? If I can avoid using my finger to like slide off the sour cream or whatever, then I'd like to do that because, most of us don't want people sticking their fingers too much in the food if we can avoid it. So I do that to try to get as much of that off of there as possible. And then we have here, and this is something that I think is interesting as people look. And by the way, here's the can opener that I use in case you guys wondered. It is I don't know, not a anything expensive or whatever, but it's this one that I think is going to be good. So what I like to do, and this was something that we started actually after we had first started using this recipe. My mother and I were talking about it, and I told her, I want a little more zing. I want a little more something to it. And I kind of like the hot and sweet taste together a little bit. And with the corn, it works great. So we're going to put in just a little bit of cayenne pepper, about 10 shakes worth of cayenne pepper.
Is that a little?
Is that a what? It's a little, yes, it's a little. Is that what you asked? Is it a little? And then we're going to put in a little bit of sugar. Helps the cayenne go down. Okay. Is that the?
How much is a little bit of sugar?
About 1 spoon. I have a bigger spoon that you would use at the table. I won't call it a measuring tablespoon, but like a larger sort of eating spoon. And I do like 1.5 sort of scoops of that, basically, of real sugar. Not fake sugar. You could use, an alternative, but I tend to use a real sugar in this. So now we're going to mix all of that together. So we've got the cayenne, we've got the sugar, we've got, the eggs, the corn mix, the sour cream, the whole kernel corn, and then the creamed corn. And we know we've got the butter in there, and then we did the pan as well. So we're going to make sure that we get this mixed up just, as well as we can. This is one of the challenges I find with being blind and cooking, and it's not a big deal, but just sort of when you're mixing something, right? Do I have it all? So I always try to get the edges and make sure I didn't miss a chunk of something that's really important to the dish. And so I will stir that, till I feel like the consistency of it. I have only light perception left, so I have no idea, right? I could have totally missed something on the edge here. And so I like to do it until I feel like the consistency is what I want it to be. Now, one of the more challenging parts, I've mentioned challenges, I do enjoy cooking, but this is that part that comes up that is about to happen when I pour this into the dish. Now, this particular dish, if you're going to use glass, which is what I'm using, you cook it at 325 for 45 to 55 minutes. It kind of depends on sort of how brown you want it on top. Using metal, you would cook at 350. So not quite as hot with the glass, and that is what I'm using. So the oven has been preset to 325. Okay, so I feel like we're good here, good as we're going to get. Now, I am going to do something that's not always recommended, and I'm going to tell you a story as to why. But I'm going to take this spoon, and I'm going to set it right here on the edge of the dish where this is going in. And then this is the part that I frankly hope goes great. Doesn't always go great, and it scares the mess out of me half the time. Is pouring my concoction into.
It's liquid enough that it will pour like that, eh?
Absolutely, it will pour. Now, this is where my fingers also get messy. But now, see, I've got that spoon handy because I kept it to the side of my dish, right? And I can sort of scoop out if I feel like I left any. I can just sort of go around the edges a little bit, scoop it, and hope that it's all good. Now, this is something to keep in mind. My son, our son, Will, he's 22 years old now, but years ago I was making cornbread. We were having chili one night, and I was making cornbread. And so now I've got that kind of where I want it. Okay. So now I'm going to take the little spoon. Now, another thing I can't do, but doesn't matter, is I just like to sort of take that spoon and run it around a little, or it's kind of a rubber spatula really that I stirred with, and just sort of, pat it around to make sure that I've got it as level as I can in this dish. But I was making this cornbread, and Will was assisting me, quote unquote, assisting me, and I said, can you take that spatula and just run it around a little bit, just make sure I've got it even. He said, sure. And then I said, a minute. I said, you're all done? He said, yep, it's ready to go. I said, okay. So I was making it in a cast iron skillet, and I took that cast iron skillet and put it in the preheated oven. And about 15 minutes later, I was like, gosh, that doesn't smell like regular cornbread. And took it out, and the spatula was still in it.
Oh, no.
And of course, I assumed he had taken the spatula out. He didn't know that he was supposed to take the spatula out because I didn't, specifically tell him to take the spatula out. And
Big spatula.
yeah. And so doing what you do sometimes, most people would be like, oh, I would have thrown the whole thing out. No way, man. No, took that the spatula had melted so much on the handle that it was like hanging over the side of the pan because it had melted so much. So we just cut that part out and pretended like it didn't happen. So there, probably some chemicals that we didn't want to be a part of. Anyway, so now that we have this ready to go, it is in here. Oven is ready. We're going to open the oven. We're going to put this in. All right. And I'm using 2 gloves, right? I have known to be a little cavalier. Now, I do not like this part of things. I'm going to flat out tell you guys.
It is difficult to make sure that's always level. And if it's as liquid as you say it is, that could be a problem. I can see that.
So many factors involved when you can't see, right? And there's different ways to do that. And so I've got a heating pad here that I'm going to put out because once you have had this dish go through everything we just talked about and do what needs to be done.
Oh, you have one of those magic instant ovens.
I have an instant oven. Yes, I do. So this is our finished Thornhill Family Corn Casserole. So you want it to be a little brown, a little crispy. It just kind of depends on how much you really want that to be. And then one of the things that you can do, and it depends on how fancy you want to be, but my wife Jane, because we have a rosemary bush at our house, and I love rosemary, is that you can kind of just garnish a little bit if you want for the table. Just a little bit of rosemary. It's not really part of the recipe per se, but just put a little bit of rosemary for fragrance. When that heat of the corn casserole comes up through that rosemary, the mix of it is just wonderful. Feels like the holidays, smells like the holidays, and truly enjoy it. So there is the Thornhill Family Corn Casserole.
I love it. And I love the whole idea with the rosemary as the garnish for presentation.
Yeah, just makes it smell so good. So
that's a recipe I make, but I've never put cayenne pepper.
Yeah,
Is of cayenne pepper.
It makes it a little zing, what'd you say?
I love it.
It gives it a little zing and a little something extra because corn by itself can be a little, I don't want to say a little boring, but it can sort of depends on what you do with it. It's like a lot of other items, right? What you put with it is what makes it. But by doing it this way, you get this, sort of crispy on top, moist, in the middle. It's a great side dish, but you add that cayenne and that sugar, and it really gives you some, kind of complex flavors. So you've got a little bit of heat, a little bit of sweet, heat and sweet, and by doing the rosemary on top, you just get that fragrance and the presentation. I always say I don't care that much about presentation because I can't see it, but there is some pride, putting a turkey down for Thanksgiving and putting a little bit of, cranberries or orange slices around the presentation, it's things like that. And I just think it just sort of makes it feel more special to me.
That was awesome. And so we've had several professional chefs on, and they always say it's those extra little ingredients, those extra little things that make it extra special. So, love it. You've given me some ideas.
Well, good, and hopefully, I don't know, but I've the mess that I make hopefully has been minimal. We'll find out in a little bit when my wife assesses my my mess. But anyway, that's one of the things when I cook. Like I just don't worry too much about those things. You obviously don't want to make an extra mess, but I just want to enjoy it. I think about my mom, and I think about times when we've sat around the table as a family and had various dishes like this one, and it just makes it a little more special.
I love it. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I always share some little tips when I'm on, Scott. And as you were talking, you'd say, well, this is the scary part for me. Sitting around my kitchen gathering up stuff to do just a few little tips. So I'm going to start with when you were putting your corn. Let me start with the first thing.
Yeah.
Many of our chefs have told us that even prior to losing their sight, their vision, hands are good for cooking. It is okay to touch your food as long as your hands are clean.
Yeah.
I had permission for that. I was all about it, and I use my hands all the time now.
Yeah.
Having that permission that makes you people who can do it too.
Yeah, good.
Good. Now you mentioned being a little stressed about pouring from your bowl into your pan.
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't go and grab a pan, but I just have this little plastic thing here. So the way I do it is I literally set my bowl on the edge of my pan so that I pour, it's 99% of the time going in.
Yeah.
When it doesn't go in,
that's what I do. I kind of rest it on the edge and go for it. And usually it works out. It's just every once in a while, right? It's off by a little bit or something happens, and it is what it is, and you clean it up and you move on. But
I kind of like to work over a tray. It makes cleanup easier.
Yes, working over a tray is a great thing.
Yeah, and I will tell you guys, we use a lot of parchment paper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes cleanup easier, and just those little things. But yeah, talking about like the can opener and being careful, I much prefer the pop tops if you can find them. You can't always find them for the things you're getting, but the pop tops on the cans, and we don't use a ton of canned,
right.
But in this case, it really really does make in this dish, to use the can. So, but yeah, there's I don't think we each kind of learn our little tricks and what we're comfortable with, and probably going in and out of the oven, even with the mitts on, is probably for me, and that's why they've got the long mitts, right, that really go a lot further up your arm. But that's probably the toughest part for me, is going in and out of the oven.
Well, I got a tip for that too. I went and grabbed my UGG glove because I don't love the long gloves. I think they're great for people, but I love the UGG glove because I can use you can feel your fingers. But the really important thing about the oven safety is opening the oven door all the way.
Yeah.
A lot of people, including me, have burned that forearm not opening it all the way. Open it all the way, stand to the side, pull the rack out.
Yeah.
Put it, push it in, and then always open it. And there are dishes that you can put into a cold oven. A lot of dishes you can put into a cold oven. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I agree.
You just add a few minutes.
Yeah, agree. So there's lots of little tips, and I think we all kind of learn what's, as was said earlier, sort of what's right for us, and sort of how we best do it to get the results that we want, and that's why some of the gadgets and things that are out there are great for people who want them. Sometimes I find too many gadgets makes it too convoluted, and I just kind of find my own little workaround. But yeah, I agree.
Scott, one other little tip that I heard on one of our Cooking Without Looking shows recently. People like to cook with their hands. It's a wonderful thing. I do it myself. This person had both a wet rag and a dry rag, hanging one off of each side so she could wipe her hands off and dry them. And I thought that was a great idea.
That is a great idea. That is a great idea for sure.
I constantly go in the sink and just wash my hands. So that's a better idea.
Yeah. I typically will too. I didn't do that today, but I typically will too, and have a drying cloth out. And and do that. But yeah, I tend to, I think I've got some on me now, but I tend to get stuff on my hands and all that. It's all right. You want to make sure your hands are clean, not only for obviously for the health aspects, but also as you go to grab a pan or something, you know, and all that, keep it from getting on the handles and all those little things. So great tip.
All right.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Hey.
Are there any questions from our audience?
Let us see. Let's open it up. Anyone in the audience have any questions for us?
I guess he explained so well.
You did do a very good job, Scott.
All right, great. Thank you.
And thank you so much. That sounds like a recipe I bet a lot of our audience is going to try this holiday season.
Yeah.
And Sylvia, on to you now.
Thank you, Alan.
I hear that it's wonderful to have you back again with us.
Thanks.
And even though you're a longtime friend of our show and participant, maybe you want to tell some of our newer audience a little bit about yourself and your trip through blindness.
Okay. Well, really quick, mine probably similar to Scott, but I was actually born legally blind and grew up visually impaired, a low vision, very low vision. And then found out when I was in my 20s that it was a progressive eye condition. And it's a form of RP, retinitis pigmentosa, as well. And interestingly enough, my doctor at that point said, you'll be blind by the time you're 30. Yeah, that wasn't really great to hear. I was
Really
pretty stressed
encouraging.
about that. And I did not go totally blind by the time I was 30. It took until about 50, so just a couple years ago. And so, as Scott mentioned, same with him, I only have light perception now, and that sometimes that's not even helpful or it's iffy. Yeah, so and I've spent my career, almost most of my career in the blindness field, and have loved it. Just working with people, helping really inspire people, motivate people, encourage people to that they can still live life and live a full life as a person with who's blind or low vision. So
Just being adaptive.
mm-hmm.
Would you like to introduce your new guide dog now, or wait until after you cook?
Go get her after I do my recipe, and I have
Okay, she's there for the cleanup, right?
right. My hands are clean. I have to wash them.
So, Sylvia, tell us what you're preparing for us today.
I'm gonna make I think also another holiday favorite, Buckeyes peanut butter balls. If you Google it or look it up using Alexa or Google device, you'll get many recipes. I'm choosing the easiest one, and they're just fun. They're yummy. It's peanut butter and chocolate. Okay, there's nothing that you can do wrong with peanut butter and chocolate, right?
Great combination.
Yeah. So I'm not going to actually totally prepare it here for y'all like Scott went through the whole thing, because it is super messy, and I have my Braille notes over here, and I'd have to be like, it would take more than a wet and dry towel. I discovered yesterday. So I'm going to go over like just a few little quick things. I have all of my things in this little work area, and I love, Alan, that you mentioned working over a tray. I just got back to my home in Florida, which I love. I was in New York where it's 20 degrees, and I'm in Florida where it's 70 degrees today. So I don't have everything I would normally have, but working over a tray, getting all of your things out ahead of time, which Scott did as well. And so I have, I like to work with a big bowl. The bigger your bowl, the better, so that, if things go over the edge, it's not going to go over the edge, because you're going to be working in that space. So, and then I have my measuring cups. I like nesting cups, and that's the ones that have different sizes. And this would be a new tip. happen to really like these metal measuring cups or whatever you call them, because I can actually hear the liquid going into it. And when I use listening for pouring, that is my method for pouring. And for example, one of the things that I use for this is an extract. So we're going to use either a vanilla or an almond extract. And I am actually going to pour with the teaspoon and pour the vanilla from the bottle with a teaspoon into a small measuring cup so that I can pour it back into the cup, whatever's left over, and I can hear it go into this cup. So that might be an idea that people could really enjoy. So when I'm getting oil or anything, those measuring cups do seem to help. I think that might be all of the things that I have tool wise. So gathering your tools is just as important as gathering your ingredients, because you don't want to be running around trying to gather. I don't know if anybody saw me when Scott was talking. I realized I had forgotten a tool and had to run over to the drawer and get it. So what we're going to use for this recipe, which will be shared, is 1.5 cups of peanut butter. 1 cup. Oh, and you don't want fancy, organic, natural peanut butter. It's got to be a peanut butter that has some consistency, a Jif, Peter Pan, a cheaper. Yeah. It's got to be something with some consistency to it, okay?
Can it be chunky or does it have to be smooth?
Well, it can be creamy. Most people make it with creamy, but I'm going to tell you, I have made it with chunky, and I love that. But I've discovered not everybody loves that or expects that in a Buckeye. So, either one, but 1.5 cups, and I'm going to show you a little trick for that. If you look online, you might see that it says 1 cup of butter, which is 2 sticks. I'm going to tell you that I have dropped this recipe down to 1 stick of butter with that 1.5 cups of peanut butter because it just seemed like too much. And I learned a new thing today. You know how, I don't know about y'all, but when they say a cup of butter, I'm like, oh my God, how many sticks is that? So Alexa told me today that you just have to double it. So 1 cup of butter is 2 sticks. 1/2 cup is 1 stick. So it's a new trick. I mean, a new little measurement thing. You don't have to ask her anymore. So the butter, and you can use margarine. I think it tastes better with butter. You're going to need 4 cups of sifted confectioner's sugar. So confectioner's sugar right here, this little box. Now, don't be worrying about the 4 cups because, okay, they're going to learn I'm kind of like you. Unless you're baking cake, that doesn't really matter. But it's essentially a box, okay? I do not sift. I don't sift anything. If it says sift in the recipe, I move on. But I didn't sift. I've never sifted for the Buckeyes. You're just going to need to stir a little bit more. And then you're going to want some kind of extract. Now, when I first made these last year, interestingly enough, I didn't have any vanilla extract. And the recipe always calls for vanilla extract. And I was like, I don't have any vanilla extract. I got almond extract. And let me tell you what, everybody is like, oh my God, what? These are amazing. I don't use vanilla anymore. I use almond extract now. And I'm going to tell you that it says 1 teaspoon for this. I put 2 or 3 because it gives it this like cherry flavor. It's delicious. It's delicious, the almond extract. So what you're going to do, that's all you need, okay? That's it. Oh, and some chocolate chips, but that's a little bit later. So what you're going to do is you want your butter. I got a stick of butter here. You want your butter to sit out on the counter for a couple hours because you want it to be soft. You want to be able to literally, I'm not going to do it, but you want to be able to break that butter in half but you do not want to melt it like Scott melted with the for the corn casserole, he melted the butter on the. Do you want this to just melt on, just soften on its own? The same with the peanut butter. If you're a person who keeps your peanut butter in the fridge, let your peanut butter sit out so it'll be a little soft. So you're going to put those in the bowl and you're going to stir, stir, stir. You could mix it with a mixer, but it's going to be, you're never going to get all that stuff off those tongs. So you could just use a fork or, a good spoon. Oh, I forgot to tell you my trick. I think it's here on Cooking Without Looking TV. If you put your spoon under some really, really hot water and get it to be hot and a little bit wet, and get your peanut butter out of the measuring cup that way, it comes right out. That too. So it's a great little way to get stuff out of those measuring cups. I was making fudge and I used that method for the marshmallow cream and it worked as well. So you're gonna put your peanut butter and your butter, mix that, and then you're gonna slowly add in your confectioner sugar. So 1 cup at a time until you get about the amount you want. I'm gonna put some of these in here. You want it to be a really nice consistency, sticky.
What is it you're putting in there?
I'm going to tell you, some I already prepared. So they're very sticky right now, very sticky. And then after you stir that really well, and you can use your hands if you want. I didn't actually have to use my hands, but I felt with the fork like, okay, do I have it all mixed? And then your little extract. And then it's going to be really sticky. So I did a little trick yesterday. I had it, you see, it's very sticky here, very sticky. It's not as sticky as it can be. And so I tried to roll them in balls, and then I put them in the freezer, and they really were like, it was tough. So you know what I did is I just stuck the whole bowl with the mixture in the freezer for about 30 minutes. And it got to a really nice consistency. If anybody's played with clay, it got to a really nice, a little bit drier clay. And I was able to just roll up these balls. And that's all you do. You take it in your hands like you're rolling up clay. Scott, Alan, have y'all rolled clay?
Oh, yes.
Been a little while. Yeah.
Oh, you see,
but not for about 70 years.
And I just put them in this little, and now this is after I put the whole big mess bowl from that mixture into the freezer and let it solidify a little bit. And then I'm going to put them in this little bowl right here. And you want to put them in some freezer safe container. Oops, see, that one got stuck because it's all sticky. Put them in this little freezer set. This is without the chocolate on them. And you're going to put these, just going to put this right in the freezer for, I would say, an hour. This is the peanut butter balls are made. You're going to stick those in your freezer for an hour so that they can get nice and hard. And then in the meantime, well, when those are nice and hard, okay, then you need a microwave safe bowl. I just use a cereal bowl, like this little ceramic cereal bowl.
Mm-hmm. A ramekin or anything like that, right?
Huh?
A ramekin or anything along that lines?
A little bit bigger.
Okay.
Because you're gonna, but it says to put 4 cups of chocolate chips. What I recommend is don't do it all at once. Just put, about half a bag into the bowl. And I also added a little bit, I didn't put this in the recipe, but I'm just going to tell you, I added a tiny bit of, you could add milk, but I added evaporated milk. Just a tiny bit, because you're going to microwave that. And do it in 30-second intervals so you can stir, because you want it to melt. And then you're going to take those balls that we just made once they're frozen. You're just going to take with a fork and just dip them in. Some people completely completely submerge them and make it into like the chocolate is completely surrounding them. If you really want a Buckeye, just the top is chocolate. So when you finish, after you dip them in chocolate, you put them back in the freezer for 30 minutes or so. And then you end up with these maybe not so beautiful, but these peanut butter Buckeyes.
You cannot go wrong mixing peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah. Amen, Alan.
And I put a little rice doily under them for present.
Well, that was absolutely wonderful, Sylvia. Thank you very much. And thank those of you in our audience for joining us today on the Cooking Without Looking Holiday 2024 edition. If you would like today's recipes, as well as past recipes, please go to our website at www.cookingwithoutlooking.wordpress.com. Sylvia?
And if you would like to see today's show or past videos, you can go to the YouTube channel. Alan?
Yes, you can, Sylvia. And people who teach students who are blind, partially sighted, can use any of our shows for their students at no charge.
And currently, there are 75 countries using these videos and lots of teachers in the United States using these videos to teach and show adaptive strategies, help people understand that people who are blind or low vision can cook and are cooking.
I think it's great. Sylvia, viewers can also check out our Cooking Without Looking podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere they get their favorite podcasts. We're also available on all Alexa-enabled devices and Victor Reading.
Victor
Reader. I'm sorry, Reader, not
Victor
Reading.
Reader.
No.
And if you would like to donate and support Cooking Without Looking and Vision World Foundation, you can visit the website. One second, I want to make sure I get it right at www.cookingwithoutlookingtv.wordpress.com, or you can call Renee at 305-200-9104.
It's really tough to read Braille with sticky fingers, isn't it? Sylvia, everyone can look for our next show in January. And thank you so much for guest hosting today.
And now my puppy has arrived, so I am going to show y'all my pig. Nellie. This is my new guide dog.
Is she a golden?
Puppy rubs. Can you see her, Alan?
It was sort of. She looks like a golden.
She's a look at her. She's just lying down. Like, give me.
She's adorable.
Oh, yeah. Mine does the same thing. As soon as you start petting her.
He's waiting for a Buckeye, but
she's
yeah.
She tried to lick my hand. She did. And so I am Sylvia Stinson Perez, and on behalf of Renee Rentmeister, executive producer. Say it, Renee.
Oh,
say it, Renee.
What?
Say it, Renee. Did I say it wrong?
Renee Rentmeister. That's okay.
Renee Rentmeister.
I'm just playing with you.
Our amazing executive director and founder of Cooking Without Looking, and Alan Preston and myself and all of the crew at Cooking Without Looking. And Vision World Foundation, we wish you all a happy holiday.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a
everyone.
lot for being with us.
Let's see if we can do this again.
Oh, time for the fun music. We're dancing.
Here it comes.
Love it. I'm eating a Buckeye.
You wanna see what we do best? We got the recipe for success. We don't need sight to make something good tonight. We're on in the kitchen, we're gonna show you what we got.